I noticed it when my pharmacy card declined over a $26 refill for my blood pressure medication. The same lisinopril I'd taken religiously for 15 years without missing a single dose, standing there at the counter on Tuesday morning while the card reader flashed angry red numbers. "That's unusual, Mr. Arison," said Maria, the head pharmacist who'd known me since my wife Eleanor died 5 years ago. She tried running the card again, her weathered hands gentle on the machine, her forehead creasing with the kind of genuine concern you show longtime customers who never cause problems. "I've never missed a bill payment in 40 years of adult responsibility. Everything runs on automatic withdrawal because that's what careful people do when they get older. After 4 decades as a senior quality control inspector at Boeing, checking every rivet and weld that kept commercial aircraft safe in the sky, I understood the critical importance of reliable systems that functioned without human error." Just before you continue to watch, Joe would like you to subscribe to this channel and like this video. It would encourage him to keep his streak of thrilling revenge stories for you to watch. All right, back to the story. The bank app on my iPhone showed insufficient funds in bold red letters that made absolutely no sense. My pension account should have contained enough money to buy a decent used car, not struggle with a basic prescription copay from someone who'd never bounced a check. "I'll come back tomorrow morning," I told Maria, forcing my voice to stay steady despite the ice crystals forming in my stomach. The 3-block walk home felt twice as long as usual, every footstep echoing with unanswered questions. Something was terribly, fundamentally wrong. Tom Henderson had served as my personal banker for 12 years, long enough to know I wasn't the type to overdraw accounts, forget payment dates, or make financial mistakes that required emergency meetings. He turned his computer monitor toward me with the reluctant precision of a surgeon showing x-rays of fractured bones. "These appear to be authorized electronic transfers, Mr. Harrison," he said, his voice carrying that careful, funeral director tone people reserve for delivering devastating news to elderly clients. The screen displayed a neat column of digital withdrawals stretching back 4 months, each transaction clean and officially formatted. February, $500. March, $1,200. April, $2,800. By July, someone was systematically removing $4,000 at a time from my pension account, like a methodical thief testing security systems, gradually increasing theft amounts until they found the maximum they could steal before triggering automatic alerts. "Tom, I never authorized any of these transfers," I said, my knuckles white as I gripped the burgundy leather armrests of his visitor chair. His expression softened with the particular type of pity people reserve for confused elderly customers who might be losing their mental faculties. "The digital signatures match your account records perfectly, sir. These transactions were initiated from a verified business computer terminal downtown using your personal access codes and security question responses." Staring at the screen showing $73,000 in unauthorized electronic transfers, more money than I'd originally paid for my house 20 years ago, I felt like someone had surgically removed the foundation from under my carefully planned retirement. Walking to my car clutching printed statements, I realized my golden years had just turned into a nightmare. At my kitchen table, I spread the bank statements across the polished oak surface like evidence photographs from a crime scene. The afternoon sunlight streaming through Eleanor's lace curtains made the numbers appear harsh and unforgiving as I put on my reading glasses and began matching transfer dates to entries in my personal calendar. Every single theft had occurred on days when I'd been working late at the office with Victoria Barnes, reviewing pension paperwork and benefit adjustment forms. She had served as my personal assistant for nearly 10 years, beginning when I was still employed full-time and continuing after retirement because federal government forms were notoriously complicated and confusing. I vividly remember her patiently guiding me through the online banking system set up 2 years ago, sitting beside me at this same kitchen table while carefully writing down passwords and security questions with the methodical care of someone performing a generous favor for a respected colleague who deserved assistance navigating modern technology. The emotional betrayal cut deeper than the financial loss. 10 years of shared birthday celebrations, friendly daily conversations, and genuine trust, all while she was systematically planning to rob me blind during my most vulnerable retirement years. Every digital fingerprint on these statements pointed directly to the same person, the woman I trusted completely with my financial future. Victoria possessed that rare combination of professional competence and personal warmth that made her indispensable around the office. She maintained detailed birthday calendars for every employee, organized elaborate retirement parties, and kept a crystal jar filled with peppermint candies on her desk for anyone who needed a quick pick-me-up during stressful workdays. She also happened to know exactly where every sensitive document was filed throughout our entire office complex, and which senior executives harbored secrets they'd pay substantial amounts to keep permanently buried in filing cabinets. During her 20-year tenure with the company, Victoria had evolved into the unofficial keeper of institutional memory and workplace gossip. She knew which department heads struggled with alcohol dependency, which middle managers were systematically falsifying overtime reports, and which vice presidents were conducting inappropriate romantic relationships with their direct subordinates. People consistently talked around her as if she were expensive office furniture, never considering that the quiet woman efficiently organizing their confidential files might be methodically cataloging their personal vulnerabilities like a professional intelligence operative, building comprehensive blackmail databases. The more I analyzed her position, the more professionally untouchable she appeared. Who would believe the accusations of a 72-year-old retiree against someone who'd been the administrative backbone of that office building for 2 complete decades? She probably possessed enough compromising information about half the management team to successfully blackmail her way out of virtually any legal trouble. Victoria had calculated this elaborate theft with mathematical precision, using her insider knowledge and my personal trust to create what must have seemed like the perfect victimless crime. Unfortunately for her, she'd made one crucial miscalculation, seriously underestimating how persistently stubborn an old aircraft quality control inspector could become when someone brazenly stole his future security. Sean Murphy operated his private investigation business from a modest strip mall office squeezed between a year-round tax preparation service and a family-owned sandwich shop, the kind of unglamorous professional location where serious detective work happened without expensive overhead costs eating into operating margins. His cramped waiting room contained 2 mismatched chairs, a wobbling coffee table covered with magazines from 2019, and a dying potted plant that had clearly given up hope months ago. "Paper trails don't lie about human behavior," Sean observed after spending 20 focused minutes studying my organized bank statements, "but people certainly do lie, and they usually leave distinctive fingerprints when they're being dishonest."
Sean appeared to be in his early 50s, with premature silver-gray hair and the patient, world-weary demeanor of someone who'd investigated every conceivable type of human betrayal at least twice during his career. His cluttered desk overflowed with active case files, and his favorite coffee mug proclaimed him world's okayest detective in faded blue letters. "These electronic signatures are mathematically too perfect," he continued, tapping the suspicious transfers with his ballpoint pen. "Authentic human signatures naturally vary based on factors like mood, physical fatigue, pen pressure, and writing angle. These are obviously digital copies, probably harvested from legitimate documents and systematically reused." Within 48 productive hours, he'd successfully traced computer IP addresses directly back to my former office building and identified the specific workstation where every fraudulent transfer had originated. All thefts occurred during normal business hours, using my personal authorization codes, but executed from Victoria's assigned computer terminal. Then Sean looked up from his detailed legal pad with raised eyebrows and asked the question that changed everything. "Did you know she has a young daughter?" The revelation hit me like ice-cold water thrown in my face. During 10 years of daily professional interaction and friendly personal conversation, Victoria had never once mentioned having a child. Not a single reference to motherhood, parenting challenges, or family responsibilities. Sean's thorough background research had uncovered an 8-year-old daughter named Sophia, currently enrolled at Riverside Elementary School under Victoria's original maiden name. The child existed in complete separation from her professional identity, hidden like classified government information. 0 family photographs displayed on her office desk, Sean noted, consulting his detailed surveillance notes. No participation in workplace fundraising events for school activities. No documented requests for parent-teacher conference leave time. This woman has made her daughter essentially invisible to every colleague. It explained numerous mysterious patterns I'd never questioned before. Those vague personal emergencies that never received detailed explanations. Those urgent telephone calls she'd accept in the hallway stairwell, always speaking in hushed, protective tones. The way she'd practically sprint from the building at exactly 5 p.m. every Friday afternoon, claiming urgent traffic concerns. Most working parents cannot stop talking about their children's academic achievements, athletic accomplishments, and daily struggles with homework assignments. Victoria had constructed an impenetrable wall between her professional and personal lives, guarding her daughter's very existence like it was sensitive national security information. That extreme level of personal compartmentalization typically indicates someone's concealing something highly significant, Sean observed with professional certainty. Learning about Sophia didn't diminish Victoria's criminal behavior, but it provided me with something I hadn't possessed before, psychological leverage that could trigger genuine maternal panic.
I've maintained an absolute principle against using children as weapons or manipulation tools, not once during 40 years of marriage, active fatherhood, and devoted grandfatherhood. That moral boundary remained completely non-negotiable, even when someone had systematically stolen my retirement security and financial independence. However, I possessed considerable understanding about parental anxiety responses, particularly what happens when protective mothers believe their personal choices might somehow endanger their children's safety, happiness, or social standing. Sean and I invested over an hour carefully establishing ethical boundaries for any psychological pressure campaign. Absolutely no direct contact with young Sophia, 0 threats of any nature, nothing whatsoever that could traumatize an innocent 8-year-old girl who bore no responsibility for her mother's criminal activities. Guilty people consistently make catastrophic judgment errors when they're genuinely panicked. If Victoria becomes convinced that law enforcement agencies are already closing in, she'll either immediately confess everything or attempt to flee jurisdiction. Either response inevitably leaves substantial evidence trails. Our strategy possessed elegant psychological simplicity. Create a convincing impression that federal authorities were already actively investigating her theft, that her criminal activities had been definitively discovered, and that her remaining time as a free person was rapidly running out. We would apply carefully calibrated pressure through Victoria's single greatest vulnerability, her fierce, protective devotion to her daughter's well-being and security. One precisely crafted psychological message that would trigger overwhelming maternal panic without crossing any moral boundaries or ethical lines. And I knew exactly how to deliver that message with maximum impact.
Constructing a federal prosecutor-quality evidence file required 3 meticulous days of careful organization and documentation. I arranged bank statements in strict chronological order, highlighting each suspicious electronic transfer in bright yellow marker. Email access logs demonstrated when Victoria had entered my accounts unauthorized. Security camera footage from our office building documented her staying late on the precise dates when money disappeared from my pension.
Sean methodically collected witness statements from co-workers who'd noticed Victoria asking unusual questions about pension distribution procedures and electronic fund transfer protocols. The finance department had officially flagged several research requests that seemed perfectly innocent at the time, but now formed an unmistakable criminal pattern. I assembled everything into a thick, 3-ring binder using colored organizational tabs and a comprehensive table of contents. 4 decades of aircraft quality control documentation had taught me exactly how to present technical evidence that told an absolutely clear, indisputable story to investigators and prosecutors. Multiple backup copies went onto encrypted thumb drives, each labeled Retirement Fraud Complete Evidence File. 1 copy for police detectives, 1 for my attorney, 1 for my personal records, and 1 for secure off-site storage. The documentation package was completely bulletproof from legal challenges, but I needed one additional element to force Victoria into revealing her escape strategy and emergency plans. And I possessed the perfect psychological trigger to accomplish exactly that. Seated at my familiar kitchen table, I selected my finest personal stationery, cream-colored paper with my full name elegantly embossed at the top in navy blue ink, the same professional letterhead I'd used for 40 years of thank you notes, sympathy cards, and formal correspondence. My handwriting needed to be sufficiently neat for a young child to read comfortably, gentle enough to avoid causing nightmares, yet clear enough to send an unmistakable message to any guilty adult who discovered it first. Dear Sophia, I began, forming each individual letter with the careful precision of someone crafting something critically important that could change lives forever. I wanted to share a special bedtime story with you about trust, honesty, and what happens when people make terrible choices that hurt others. I carefully constructed a tale about a hard-working man who had labored diligently for 40 years, saving every possible penny for his retirement security. The story described how he trusted a helpful lady to assist with managing his important financial papers, but she secretly transferred all his money into her own bank accounts, believing no one would notice or investigate. Tomorrow morning, some very important grown-ups in official uniforms are coming to have a serious conversation with this lady, because when someone takes money that rightfully belongs to someone else, there are federal laws that require it to be returned immediately. Sometimes police officers and federal agents have to become involved to ensure everything gets resolved properly and legally. The absolutely crucial conclusion: I want you to understand completely that none of this situation is your fault, sweetheart. Sometimes adults make terrible, selfish decisions that hurt innocent people, but children are never, ever responsible for the wrong choices that grown-ups make. Every single word was specifically chosen to provide comfort to a child while simultaneously terrifying her guilty mother.
Through 7 days of patient, professional observation, Sean had mapped Victoria's evening routine with military precision and attention to detail. School pickup at exactly 3:15 p.m. Grocery shopping on Tuesdays and Fridays. Dinner preparation completed by 6 p.m. And every single night, without any exceptions, she thoroughly reviewed Sophia's school folder contents before bedtime. Homework assignments, permission slips for field trips, teacher communication notes, library book checkout receipts. Victoria examined every piece of paper with the meticulous thoroughness of a protective mother who absolutely could not afford to miss any crucial information about her child's academic progress and social development. That nightly inspection ritual became my perfect delivery mechanism. I waited until well after school hours, when Riverside Elementary was completely empty except for the evening maintenance crew performing routine cleaning duties. I located Sophia's distinctive purple backpack hanging on its designated classroom hook and carefully slipped my letter between a completed spelling test and a field trip permission form requiring parental signature, exactly where Victoria would discover it during her systematic evening review process. If Victoria found my message first, she would immediately understand that it was actually intended for her guilty conscience and criminal awareness. If Sophia discovered it initially, she would simply read a gentle, reassuring story that wouldn't cause nightmares, but might prompt innocent questions her mother couldn't easily answer without revealing incriminating information. Driving home through the evening rush hour traffic, my hands remained completely steady on the steering wheel, my conscience absolutely clear. After 4 decades of following rules, maintaining integrity, and treating people fairly, I definitely earned the moral right to bend certain boundaries when someone had so completely violated my trust and financial security. My cellular phone rang precisely 53 minutes later. "She discovered your letter approximately 20 minutes ago," Sean reported through my phone speaker, his voice carrying the controlled, professional excitement of an experienced hunter who'd successfully located his intended prey. Immediately started throwing clothes into multiple suitcases like the entire house was engulfed in flames. I could visualize Victoria's panic response with perfect clarity, reading my carefully crafted letter once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession, gradually realizing that someone definitely knew about the stolen pension money, knew about Sophia's closely guarded existence, and possessed enough detailed information to write what sounded exactly like an official countdown to imminent arrest and prosecution. "What's her current location and direction of travel?" I asked, already reaching for my car keys with practiced efficiency. "Interstate 90 eastbound, maintaining speeds well above posted limits. She's got the kid properly buckled into her car seat, 2 large suitcases in the trunk, and what appears to be a substantially thick cash envelope sitting on the passenger seat." Victoria obviously believed she was executing a brilliantly clever escape plan, disappearing into the night like a professional crime thriller movie. But criminal minds consistently overestimate their own intelligence while dramatically underestimating their pursuers' determination, resources, and investigative capabilities. "I'm immediately contacting Detective Martinez at Financial Crimes," I announced. "Maintain visual surveillance contact, but keep a safe distance to avoid detection." The moment Victoria crossed state boundaries carrying stolen federal funds and accompanied by a minor child, her charges would automatically escalate to serious federal jurisdiction territory. That meant FBI involvement, federal prosecutors with unlimited resources, and prison sentences measured in years rather than months. The carefully constructed trap was closing with mathematical precision, exactly according to plan. Detective Martinez was methodically finishing his evening paperwork when I arrived at the Financial Crimes Division carrying my comprehensive evidence binder. I'd called ahead to explain the urgent situation, so he had already cleared substantial desk space and was prepared to review my documentation while I provided detailed chronological explanations. "This level of documentation rivals what our forensic accounting specialists typically produce," he said, with genuine professional admiration, carefully studying the meticulously organized bank records.
Most crime victims arrive here with emotional reactions and unsubstantiated suspicions. You've delivered a complete prosecution package that's trial-ready." Martinez immediately contacted Highway Patrol Dispatch, issuing a high-priority BOLO alert for Victoria's silver Honda Accord with specific license plate information. Within minutes, they had notified all interstate checkpoint stations and activated sophisticated camera monitoring systems throughout the region. Modern highway systems maintain comprehensive surveillance coverage every few miles, he assured me with confidence. If she's attempting to flee eastbound with substantial cash and a minor child, we'll definitely intercept her vehicle before she reaches the state boundary line. Federal criminal charges automatically activate when suspects cross state lines while carrying stolen funds exceeding $50,000. Victoria's systematic theft qualified for serious federal law enforcement attention and correspondingly severe legal penalties. I thanked Martinez sincerely and drove home feeling genuinely hopeful for the first time in months of worry and investigation. Every chess piece was positioned correctly on the board. All that remained was patiently waiting for Victoria to make her final, ultimately fatal mistake. The crucial phone call arrived exactly 2 hours later. Highway Patrol strategically established what appeared to be a completely routine safety checkpoint near the Washington state border. Standard document verification procedures, sobriety screening protocols, and polite courtesy questions about travel destinations and cargo contents. Nothing that would immediately raise suspicion. Victoria probably assumed it represented typical drug interdiction efforts or drunk driving enforcement, just another minor bureaucratic delay on her planned escape route to permanent freedom and new identity. When her license plate number triggered a priority alert in the computer system, officers professionally directed her into the secondary inspection area with courteous efficiency. They politely requested that she step out of her vehicle while they verified her personal information and ensured the child's safety and proper restraint compliance. That precise moment marked when Victoria's meticulously planned criminal escape collapsed completely and irrevocably. In the back seat, young Sophia clutched her beloved stuffed elephant and watched uniformed adults moving around her mother with serious expressions and constant radio communication chatter. The kind of dramatic scene that appears exciting and adventurous on television programs, but feels absolutely terrifying when you're 8 years old and completely unable to understand the adult implications and consequences. Handcuffs clicked shut around Victoria's wrists while a state trooper recited Miranda rights in the standard monotone voice they teach at police academies nationwide. Her face turned chalk white when the horrible realization hit that this wasn't random misfortune or coincidental bad luck. Someone had orchestrated her complete downfall with surgical precision and perfect timing. Detective Martinez called my home phone at exactly 11:47 p.m. with news that sounded like beautiful music to my exhausted, worried ears. Suspect currently in custody with flight risk designation confirmed. Federal charges pending review. All stolen funds have been frozen pending complete recovery proceedings.
He patiently explained that young Sophia had handled the traumatic situation considerably better than most adults would have managed under similar stressful circumstances. A specially trained child welfare social worker had quickly arrived with coloring books, juice boxes, and gentle explanations appropriate for her age and emotional development. The biological father is driving up from Portland tonight with current custody documentation. Martinez continued with reassuring professionalism. Clean background check results, stable employment history, appropriate housing situation. The child will definitely have a much healthier environment there than remaining with a convicted felon.
I hung up the phone and sat quietly in my familiar kitchen, listening to the steady wall clock that had measured time through 40 years of early morning alarms, honest work, and careful financial planning for retirement security. Victoria's criminal career was completely finished, but complex legal proceedings were only just beginning. Justice moved with the inexorable certainty of gravity and natural law, and I possessed unlimited patience to see the entire process through to its final resolution. The most difficult and stressful part was finally behind us now.
The FBI's Specialized Financial Crimes Task Force approached Victoria's case like a graduate-level masterclass in modern theft techniques and digital fraud investigation. They systematically traced every single stolen dollar through an intricate maze of shell accounts, dummy corporations, and electronic transfers that revealed the stunning scope of her criminal operation. Their comprehensive investigation uncovered something far more extensive and serious than my individual case alone. Over a 3-year period, Victoria had systematically robbed 6 different retirees, expertly exploiting her privileged access to company benefits systems to redirect pension payments and insurance settlements into accounts she personally controlled. The total theft amount exceeded $400,000, enough money to purchase a comfortable house, fund a complete college education, or secure the kind of retirement security that she had ruthlessly stolen from people who'd worked their entire adult lives for that financial independence. The bank's Fraud Recovery Division worked in close coordination with federal prosecutors to reverse every traceable transaction possible. Their investigation discovered accounts in 3 different states, all opened using clever variations of her victims' personal information and social security numbers. Assistant U.S. Attorney Williams reviewed my evidence binder with genuine professional admiration and respect. "Your meticulous documentation saved our team literally months of investigative work," she said with appreciation. "Most financial fraud cases require 2 full years to build properly and completely. Your case is trial-ready in 2 weeks." Attention to detail prevents much bigger problems later, a fundamental principle that works equally well for aircraft safety inspection and criminal prosecution success. Federal agents executed comprehensive search warrants on Victoria's apartment with the systematic thoroughness and professional efficiency of people who'd conducted these operations thousands of times throughout their careers. They discovered exactly what Sean had predicted: detailed records of her entire theft operation, multiple burner phones with suspicious contacts, and freshly issued cashier's checks ready for immediate conversion and transportation. The real evidentiary treasure was a standard composition notebook filled with Victoria's meticulous criminal bookkeeping and record-keeping. Victim names, account numbers, transfer amounts, and theft dates, all recorded like legitimate business transactions, complete with profit calculations and detailed expansion plans. Even more disturbing were extensive handwritten notes about her co-workers' personal vulnerabilities and exploitable weaknesses. Financial troubles, medical problems, family secrets, workplace romantic affairs, information she'd systematically collected over 20 years, like a professional intelligence operative, building comprehensive blackmail files for future use. All that carefully accumulated leverage suddenly became completely worthless paper. Secrets only function as effective weapons when you remain free to deploy them strategically against your targets. Victoria would be spending the next decade in federal prison, where office gossip and workplace politics carry absolutely no currency or influence. I slept more peacefully that night than I had since first discovering the theft months ago. Child Services worked in careful coordination with Sophia's father and a specialized trauma counselor to minimize transition difficulties and emotional disruption. He worked as a certified public accountant in Portland, owned his home outright, and had been attempting to gain legal custody for over 2 years through proper legal channels. I never met young Sophia personally, but I sent a carefully selected box of age-appropriate books to the family counselor managing her case and transition process. Stories about friendship, adventure, and children who solve problems through courage and creativity. Absolutely nothing involving crime, courtrooms, and adult legal consequences. Reading helps children process difficult experiences in healthy ways, the counselor explained when she called to thank me for the thoughtful donation. Stories provide them with psychological frameworks for understanding their own situations without feeling overwhelmed by adult complications they can't possibly control or comprehend. Children should never inherit the emotional weight and psychological burden of their parents' criminal choices and selfish decisions. They deserve complete protection from adult mistakes and genuine opportunities to build their own positive life stories without carrying inherited shame or guilt. Sophia was finally getting that crucial chance, safely placed with a loving father who'd fought through legal systems for years to provide the stability and security her mother had systematically destroyed through criminal behavior. 3 weeks after Victoria's arrest and imprisonment, my phone buzzed with the notification I'd been anxiously anticipating. Account restoration process complete. All funds available for immediate access and withdrawal. Opening the banking application, I stared at the balance representing 40 years of 5 a.m. alarm clocks, lunch bucket dinners, and careful financial planning for retirement security. Not merely money, but genuine peace of mind, the crucial difference between dignity and dependence during my remaining years. I prepared coffee in my favorite ceramic mug and stood at the kitchen window watching morning sunlight spread across the backyard garden my late wife Eleanor had lovingly planted and I still maintained with devoted attention to her memory. The same comforting routine that had anchored my days for decades, but now completely free from the constant background weight of financial anxiety that had haunted me for months during this investigation. Peace sounds exactly like nothing at all. Just ordinary, blessed quiet, without the persistent hum of worry and stress that had followed me since first discovering the theft. I'd forgotten how precious and healing that silence could be to a person's soul. Court proceedings still lay ahead, but the final outcome was already predetermined by evidence and Victoria's own criminal choices.
I spent the following month constructing comprehensive financial defenses that would protect me from any future Victorias or similar criminal threats. Automatic account alerts for every single transaction exceeding $25. Two-factor authentication on every account I owned, including my grocery store loyalty card and library membership. A separate, bonded fiduciary service now handles all pension distributions, ensuring no individual person can access my life savings without multiple authorizations and comprehensive oversight reviews from independent third parties. Sandra, my new banker, suggested mandatory monthly reconciliation meetings every first Tuesday without any exceptions. I created a detailed verification checklist and mounted it inside the cabinet where I store coffee supplies, positioned exactly where I'd see it every morning while starting my daily routine. Careful people win quiet battles through small, consistent habits that build protective walls criminal minds can't scale or overcome. I'd learned this lesson in the most expensive way possible, but I'd learned it permanently and completely. My new financial assistant represents a fully bonded service with rotating personnel and multiple oversight layers. No more personal relationships with people who have direct access to my retirement security. Business relationships stay strictly professional and properly supervised. One final courthouse appointment remained on my calendar. Victoria's arraignment felt exactly like closing a disturbing book I'd never wanted to read in the first place. I sat in the back row wearing my navy blue suit, the same formal outfit I'd worn to retirement celebrations and graduation ceremonies back when I mistakenly believed Victoria was trustworthy and honorable. She searched the courtroom systematically until she located my face, desperately looking for something I no longer owed her, forgiveness perhaps, some indication that I might be willing to testify on her behalf, because we'd maintained what I thought was a genuine professional friendship for so many years. I kept my facial expression carefully neutral and my hands properly folded. Forgiveness remains a private decision you make for personal peace and healing, not a public favor you grant to people who've completely violated your fundamental trust and financial security. Judge Morrison discussed flight risk factors and the serious nature of federal financial crimes in detail. Victoria's bail was denied completely, her next court date scheduled for 6 weeks in the future, her fate effectively sealed by her own criminal choices and my methodical documentation efforts. I left the courtroom before the session officially concluded because I'd heard everything necessary for closure. Justice was proceeding exactly on schedule, and I had much better ways to invest my remaining time than observing legal ceremonies and formalities. Friends and neighbors consistently asked why I'd chosen to write to Victoria's innocent daughter, instead of confronting her directly at the office like a normal person would handle such situations, as if polite workplace confrontation would somehow have produced better results than strategic psychological pressure. Because panic forces criminals to reveal their actual escape plans and emergency procedures, I explained to my neighbor Harold during our regular morning coffee conversation ritual. Direct confrontation simply gives them valuable time to prepare more convincing lies and develop better cover stories. My letter contained absolutely zero threats, accusations, or harsh language that could traumatize an innocent child. Just a gentle bedtime story describing natural consequences in terms any 8-year-old could easily understand, while simultaneously delivering a message any guilty adult would interpret with crystal clarity and rising panic. The strategy worked exactly as intended with mathematical precision. Victoria's overwhelming maternal panic created the evidence trail that guaranteed her conviction and imprisonment. Sometimes the gentlest approach delivers the most devastating impact on criminal behavior. She learned that harsh lesson on a dark highway with federal handcuffs around her wrists and her daughter watching from the back seat. I keep my personal copy of the letter in the desk drawer where I store important documents, occasionally rereading it to appreciate how careful word choice and precise phrasing can change everything about a situation. Every sentence was crafted to remain completely within the boundaries of basic human decency. Important people will talk to the lady tomorrow about what she did. Nothing more threatening than simple, unavoidable truth. Just the accurate observation that personal actions inevitably produce corresponding consequences, regardless of our readiness to face them or accept responsibility. Taking things that don't belong to you always brings serious trouble. Universal wisdom any child could understand, and any guilty parent would recognize as an accurate warning about the future. The letter's psychological power came from its gentleness rather than any implied threats or intimidation. Truth delivered softly still lands exactly where it needs to go with maximum impact. It found Victoria's conscience and triggered precisely the panicked response that ended her criminal career permanently and completely. That desperate response followed her through every stage of prosecution to final sentencing and imprisonment. Victoria had genuinely believed her extensive collection of workplace secrets would provide permanent immunity from any consequences or accountability. 20 years of carefully gathered insurance policies, written and overheard conversations, confidential documents, and recorded personal vulnerabilities of colleagues and supervisors.
But leverage only functions effectively when you remain free to deploy it strategically against your intended targets. Those accumulated secrets became completely worthless paper the precise moment federal agents placed handcuffs around her wrists at that highway checkpoint. Her carefully cultivated reputation as the person who knew where all institutional bodies were buried died instantly under those harsh fluorescent lights in full view of her terrified daughter. Sean's professional investigation file didn't care about office politics, corporate hierarchies, or interpersonal relationships. Bank records and computer logs don't care whose feelings might be hurt by the truth or consequences. Victoria learned the hard way that documented facts are infinitely more powerful than whispered rumors, and that professional documentation beats personal intimidation every single time, without exception. She'd built her sense of criminal invincibility on foundations made of office gossip, but I'd constructed my prosecution case on foundations of spreadsheets, timestamps, and irrefutable evidence. Numbers don't lie to protect people's feelings, and her numbers sent her to federal prison for 8 years minimum.
When the final conviction was entered into court records, there was no celebration, no champagne toast, no victory lap around my neighborhood. Just a quiet, deeply satisfying phone call with my son Kevin, and a longer than usual evening walk to clear my head and settle my thoughts about everything that had happened. "You holding up all right through this whole ordeal, Dad?" Kevin asked when I recounted the complete story from beginning to resolution. "Better than all right," I replied honestly, meaning every word without having to exaggerate for his benefit. "I'm sleeping completely through the night again for the first time in months. All the worry and stress is completely gone now." We transitioned naturally to normal grandfather conversations after that difficult topic. His children's upcoming school concerts and athletic events, a fishing trip we'd been planning for next summer, whether I needed any assistance with household maintenance projects or repairs. Real life filling back in where theft and betrayal had tried to create permanent emotional damage and financial insecurity. That's the victory that truly endures. Ordinary conversations about everyday family things, without the constant background static of legal concerns or financial fears threatening your security and peace of mind. Victoria had stolen my money, but she could never steal back the genuine peace that came from seeing justice served properly and completely. Sophia is thriving with her devoted father in Portland, attending an excellent school and learning that responsible adults can fix the serious problems they create when given sufficient time and appropriate legal consequences. Her counselor provides occasional progress updates through proper professional channels, and all reports remain consistently positive and encouraging. My pension sits exactly where it rightfully belongs, protected by sophisticated electronic surveillance systems and a grandfather's hard-earned wisdom about trusting people without proper verification and documentation. I check account balances monthly with the thoroughness of someone who will never again assume good intentions without verified proof. Victoria thought her accumulated secrets made her permanently untouchable by law enforcement, but she discovered that courtroom doors swing both directions with equal force. Some open new opportunities for justice and accountability, others close forever on criminals who seriously underestimate their victims' determination and resourcefulness. I recovered every stolen penny plus interest and penalty fees. More importantly, I recovered my peace of mind and renewed faith in systematic problem-solving approaches that had served me well throughout my career. Those were the real dividends I've been saving for 40 decades of early mornings and careful financial planning.
If you're watching this because someone has seriously underestimated your capabilities, remember, being older doesn't mean being helpless, naive, or easy to manipulate. Sometimes bedtime stories can change endings in ways the villain never anticipates or sees coming, until it's far too late to escape consequences. Trust your instincts completely. Document everything meticulously. And never forget that patience, combined with thorough preparation, can move mountains that brute force cannot budge. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Also check out other videos on the channel. Joe's got more interesting stories for you.